everyone thought robo advice is going to be the next thing in wealth management and just hasn't really taken off. And I think a big part of that is because you can't speak with a human being.
What is personalization?
Personalization is essentially a service offering that is tailored to your unique circumstances and preferences. Within the defined contribution space, it becomes a more specific definition. What is it going to take to get you engaged with your retirement plan for at least 15 minutes?
Wow.
15 minutes, right? I'm not asking for an hour, right? I'm setting, we're setting the threshold pretty low.
Yeah. Welcome to the Tao of Chao podcast, where we will try to find balance and provide a clearer path forward in this uncertain world. Shawn O'Brien is the Director of Retirement at Cerulli Associates, a market intelligence, research, and consulting firm. And today I have the pleasure of having Shawn on my show to talk about personalization, a hot topic in the retirement space, and how managed account, financial wellness play a part. And here is Shawn. Shawn, thank you for joining me on this podcast. It's wonderful to see you again. We kind of run into each other throughout the year all the time, and we never get the time to really spend together. And I think this is a great opportunity to do it. So thank you for agreeing to be on my podcast.
Yeah, likewise, Philip. My pleasure to be here. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. So Shawn, before we get started, I know you, I know your background, I know Cerulli, but just for the audience, share with us a little bit about Cerulli, share us about you, the role that you play there, and then we launch into our discussion.
Sure. So Cerulli, we've been around for 31 years. We're a consulting firm and research firm that focuses exclusively on the asset and wealth management industries. We were founded by Kurt Cerulli about 31 years ago, and he's still the CEO of the firm. I head up the retirement practice at Cerulli. So our retirement practice is primarily focused on the defined contribution markets, but we also spend a lot of time covering the IRA markets and the IRA rollover space as well. I also oversee the data analytics team at Cerulli Associates, which is focused on really data warehousing. We're sitting on a wealth of proprietary data on the asset and wealth management industries at Cerulli. So trying to really optimize our data warehousing around that and data engineering around building out our models moving forward and really build some automations there. And I would say that lately, a large part of my time at Cerulli has been focused on, from a subject matter standpoint, on more consulting work. So helping asset managers, retirement plan providers, and other, advisory firms, other firms that touch the retirement space and the wealth management space with their strategic initiatives, whether it's a strategic consulting project or engagement with those clients, or a co-branded white paper, or some other type of custom research. That's been a big focus of my time over the last couple of years from a subject matter standpoint. I also oversee kind of our research agenda for the retirement practice as well, and I have a whole team on the retirement side that helps with the research as well. So, wearing a few different hats at Cerulli and really, really loving it.
Terrific. So this year, as I'm sure you're going to hear it over and over and over, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the landmark legislation called ERISA, which was established to protect and advance retirement and health and welfare benefits for American workers. And we're also noting, actually, at the same time, 20th anniversary, if I'm correct, of the first managed account solution being launched by Financial Engine and now Edelman Financial Engine.
Yeah.
So this is the first attempt to introduce, back then, what we're going to spend a bit of time, hopefully today, and download your brain a little bit on personalization into the defined contribution plan space.
Yes.
Today, in 2023, I think you are writing and speaking a lot on personalization. This is the rage. Some of it, I think, is to do with, where we are from a technology standpoint. Some of it is because we are constantly, as an industry and as people like you, sort of thinking about how we can improve outcome, whatever that means. And I think it's not well defined, but anyways, betterment for the average workers who needs guidance or what have you. So, Shawn, so for clarity's sake, what is personalization? And what does that mean in the defined contribution space? I think we can start from there.
Right. I mean, if you think about personalization more broadly, personalization is essentially a service offering or product that is tailored to your unique circumstances and preferences as an individual, consumer, or investor. Within the defined contribution space, I think it becomes a more specific definition. So, financial advice, portfolio management, and guidance that is tailored to your unique circumstances and preferences.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about personalization and how it plays out in the retirement space, on one end of the spectrum, if you're working with a financial advisor who is providing you with comprehensive financial planning services and managing your money for you, that's really the ultimate personalized experience. Within the defined contribution space, though, we know that a large portion of the vast majority of the participants within the 401k space specifically don't have ready access to a financial advisor. We need to find something that's more scalable and more something where incentives can be met from both the demand and supply side for personalization. So we have managed accounts. When we think about managed accounts, there may be a less expensive option generally than what individual investors could expect to achieve or get access to outside of the plan with a financial advisor. But nonetheless, you get that personalized advice and custom portfolio management. You just may not receive the same type of kind of white glove treatment you get if you're a more affluent investor outside of the plan. And then you have kind of scaled down versions of personalization. You have personalized target date funds, which kind of, I would say on the spectrum, sit between off-the-shelf target date funds and managed accounts. And so, you have a few different flavors of personalization from an investment standpoint within the broader retirement space. And you also have for the masses within the retirement space, financial wellness. So I like to think of it personally as something that's more geared towards helping you make more effective short-term financial decisions. A lot of those services are really focused on individuals who are having trouble making those next dollar decisions and facing those next dollar problems about what they should do with their constrained budget and their constrained income. But there are others that would throw everything that has to do with financial planning under the financial wellness umbrella. And I think that's can create for some ambiguity at times when we're thinking about serving a variety of different participants with really different financial circumstances and needs. That's my personal take on wellness, but wellness is part of that broader spectrum of personalized services that are being offered within the DC ecosystem.
So we're going to address a lot of, I'm so glad to hear all that you've talked about. There's so much in there.
There's a ton. Yeah.
There's so much that maybe we need 3 of these podcasts to talk about it. But thank you. Thank you for bringing those topics up. I think those are very relevant, very important. So according to the February 2024, which is just the current issue of Plan Advisor magazine, I'm sure you have read it or seen it, Vanguard noted that among Vanguard's 5 million participants, I was expecting more than that, but 5 million participants on its record-keeping platform, 77% of those people have access to a managed account through their retirement plan. I didn't know that number. That's very big. I mean, I didn't expect that. But 9% of that group are enrolled. So let's just say 10%, meaning 7.7% of the 5 million, which is not a heck of a lot, but a lot more than before, are actually enrolled in some kind of a managed account solution. In addition, in these requests for proposals, as you know, that's how we do due diligence. For Vanguard service, now we'll always ask about advice for participants. So that's, like you said, it's happening.
Right.
So what has changed in the retirement industry that makes personalization more a reality today in 2024 than, I know 20 years is a long time, but even the last 5-10 years, that when managed account has always been around. So what has pushed this to come to where we are today based on that statistic? I mean, they also cited Fidelis. It's very similar. It's around 9 or 10% of the group that has access are actually enrolled. But that number really hasn't moved. What has moved is the number of plans making managed account available. I think that needle has moved, but the number of folks who are in it has always been around, if I recall correctly, between 8 to 10%, unless I'm wrong. Talk to me about that.
Sure. Yeah, it depends on the plan. There are some, in terms of enrollment, we don't capture the percentage of participants that are enrolled in a managed account. We do
Okay.
capture the percentage of plans
Okay.
through a variety of surveys. We have our DC consultant survey, we have our 401k plan sponsor survey, and then we look at third party data like data from Plan Sponsor Council of America.
Yeah.
And yes, the adoption has gradually ticked upward in terms at a plan level. We see greater adoption in the mid to large plan markets. But in terms of why we're seeing a growth in adoption,
Yeah.
there are a few different factors at play here. One is the programs have just gotten better. You've got managed account programs being able to utilize a wider variety of participant data points than they were utilizing years ago. So you can create additional personalizations or just a more tailored or bespoke portfolio and offer more bespoke advice to participants that's more informed and perhaps more germane to that participant. So you have that, which has been in the favor of managed account programs. We've seen fees for managed account programs come down over the years as well. I would say that's consistent with the broader industry, though. I mean, record-keeping fees have come down over time, and they've faced significant pressure. The broader asset management industry has faced significant fee compression over the last 10, 20 years. So managed accounts fees for those have also compressed. One thing I've noticed, though, more qualitatively, is that last year we published a co-branded white paper with Edelman Financial Engines last year on the benefits of personalization in DC plans. Leading up to that white paper, we conducted about 20 executive interviews with plan sponsors in the mega plan market. So plans with at least $1 billion in assets,
Right.
On the corporate side mainly, but we also had a few public DC plan sponsors in there as well.
Right.
And one thing that came up in those conversations over and over was, especially from the HR and benefits side of the house at these firms, is the desire to give participants access to someone they can talk to, a human being that they can speak with. And your top managed account programs, a lot of them they do that. And advisor managed accounts, which are more of a newer flavor of managed account that are really driven by the aggregator firms to a larger extent, also offer that type of service. 10, 15 years ago, everyone thought robo advice is going to be the next thing in wealth management, and it just hasn't really taken off. And I think a big part of that is because you can't speak with a human being who can provide you with that assurance and that comfort and really touch upon those psychological and emotional aspects of long-term investing and financial planning. So, I say that because I think part of the appeal of managed account programs and part of the reason why some plans initially even start looking at managed account programs and having their consultants do due diligence on these programs and go out and conduct RFPs is because there's someone usually on the benefits side of the house that says, we want to give our participants someone to talk to about their finances. And sometimes that's a record keeper, but we know the record keeper is not often acting in a truly fiduciary capacity. They're providing more guidance. Some might provide, quote unquote, point in time advice, but it's not the same as holistic financial planning and portfolio management. There's a certain fiduciary standard that managed account programs abide by. And so I think all of those factors have played into the increase in adoption of managed account programs. And I also think, lastly, when you think about personalization more broadly, it's a term that has been used a zillion times in the retirement space in the last couple of years. It's been, topic du jour of 2023, and it seems like it will continue to be for 2024. It's something that we're seeing in all other aspects of our lives, right? So it's something that we're end investors and individuals, 401k participants, they are the U.S. workforce to a large extent, right? And, we are, as participants in 401k plans, seeing it in all other aspects of our lives. And I think becoming more comfortable with different service providers having access to our data. We actually, not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but we started surveying 401k participants about their level of comfort providing various data points to their retirement plan provider, assuming, one, that it would improve their financial wellness or advice experience, and two, the data would not be shared with their employer. And for the most part, participants are pretty comfortable sharing that data. And we didn't see a huge dispersion across age cohorts. I was expecting younger participants to maybe be a little bit more comfortable. But there wasn't a huge difference across those age cohorts and generational cohorts. So all those factors. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's all of those things that are contributing to the greater emphasis on personalization and the growth and adoption of managed accounts.
Is it also fair to say that record keepers are also connecting to more technology over the time that they are able to offer more robust solution?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. That's the other point I had. I had like so many there. I was like, oh man, I know I was missing one. Is yes, you've seen there are certain technological constraints around data sharing, and record keepers are only willing and able to share so much data, and they're only willing to integrate so many services on their platform at a given time, and they have competing priorities. But you have these fintech providers, IGPS, iJoin, firms like this that are providing kind of that additional platform or interface or service at the fringes of the retirement ecosystem that help advisors or record keepers deliver a greater level of personalization, whether it's driving participant engagement or helping asset managers deliver personalized solutions. That I think is starting to kind of expedite some of the integrations and the adoption of some of these newer, more personalized advice and portfolio management solutions. So I think that's also been a key driver, is those fintechs on the fringes of the retirement space.
So you would say both pull and push, and on a better superhighway. So all this add together really motivated employers and participants to ask for more personalization, whatever that. I don't think they go around saying personalization, but more advice, more service, more touch points. And I think that is really looking at the retirement plan itself a lot more than just offering retirement. I mean, even the law, even you look at all the Secure Act and so on, is going into things that like student debt, which is really, I guess, everything you can attach to retirement, because ultimately we all retire, I guess, right? So every nickel that I don't have to spend now, it can be in retirement. I mean, we've stretched what retirement savings is about. I guess we can do that. Emergency savings, another area, because people are borrowing from the retirement plan to pay for emergency. So everything, including the probably solar panel, if I can lower my cost in utilities, and I will have more money. And so eventually, maybe I foresee, I'm just kidding, of course, that retirement plan will have a special standard, just how you can use some of the money to buy solar panels. I mean, there's no end to it.
Yes, exactly right. There is no end to it. And I also think, you mentioned AI earlier, and it's all the rage right now, and people are wondering about the possibilities for the retirement space. And and I talked a little bit earlier about some of those frictions around data sharing and gathering more robust participant data. And there are really real necessary constraints around that from the employer standpoint, and sharing employee data with service providers and everything like that. But I do think and this doesn't necessarily have to be AI, but it could be other forms of predictive analytics that could, and maybe, AI is part of this in terms of gathering the data, but that could be using other sources of data around individual investors and just households in general, and triangulating that data to inform or infer certain characteristics or circumstances that end investors could be experiencing without actually accessing PII on that participant. And we're already kind of doing that in ways. And when you think about age-based portfolios, I mean, we're making an inference about that participant based on the age of the investor. I think if there could be third-party data sources that could, whether it's, web scraping or just gathering, third-party data from government filing data or whatever it may be, or a combination of those things, probably, that could help get us closer to what that participant is actually going through and living through. That wouldn't require a lot of data sharing between record keepers and other service providers within the retirement ecosystem. maybe down the road, that's another way in which we can maybe not personalize services, but get closer to personalization and offer something that's more germane to that participant without accessing their PII, right? And I think that there's an opportunity there, in theory.
Yeah.
From a technical standpoint, will we be able to get there? I think that's where it's fuzzy for me.
As we talk, I think of separating some things and tell me if I'm thinking correctly. It is still the common wisdom that a majority of the folks are not engaged,
right,
on the investment side. So perhaps when we talk about personalization, perhaps when we talk about managed account, we really are separating two things in my mind. One is purely to do with asset allocation, portfolio management, rebalancing, and all that type of stuff, which I think can be done more on a robo basis. I mean, I'm using that word again.
Yep.
But it's the other soft stuff that people want that may or may not have anything to do with necessarily managed account.
Yeah.
So, for example, am I saving enough? Should I pay off this debt first, and then so that I will then have more money to put into the retirement, or should I just continue where I am? What about the HSA? Should I start putting some money in there because I'm worried about long-term care and emergency savings? Forget about investing the emergency savings. I mean, that should be in some kind of liquid. How do I think about that? Is it 6 months? Is it 3 months? I feel kind of insecure about my job. Should I have more? Those are sort of almost like call-in radio show type. I don't mean to demean, but very, very basic stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with managed account. And I think that the industry is using a sort of laziness, using one single thing. Oh, financial wellness, like you said.
Right.
What does it really mean? And even the people who are asking, like you've done surveys, we can look into your survey and say, what are people really asking for? Are they just using a nomenclature, but they mean something somewhat different than that nomenclature? And so are we solving everything by saying this, whereas we really should be differentiating and slicing different things to better serve the client away from investment?
Right.
What's your thought on that? I'm sorry, I went on to this question.
No, that's great. One, in the beginning of what you just said there, you mentioned that participant engagement is, it's kind of it's the precursor. It's what you need in order to get participants to take action on their finances at all. Right. So the first question is, how do you drive that? And we always hear about, I hear a lot of talks. Frankly, I probably say it sometimes too, like participant engagement is the key, but like, I don't really hear a lot of solutions.
No.
Or solutions that work. We've been having conversations around that, and we're doing some custom research for a client right now, where we're surveying participants, and this is separate from our typical annual 401k participant survey. And we're asking them those types of questions specific to engagement.
Yeah.
What is it going to take to get you engaged with your retirement plan for at least 15 minutes?
Wow.
Yeah. 15 minutes, right? I'm not asking for an hour, right? I'm setting, we're setting the threshold pretty low.
Yeah.
Long enough where you can actually, get a sense of what's going on, right? Not 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Look at my account balance and sign off. Right. And is it some sort of, stipend or financial incentive? Are there positive reinforcements and immediate gratifications that we can provide participants to look at something that doesn't have, especially for younger participants, doesn't always have, immediate hard hitting implications. The pain or gain you experience is so far down the road that it's something that you can keep kicking down the road. Right. So is it that? Is it some sort of reimbursement? Is it some sort of healthcare reimbursement or something like this? And some plans have implemented those types of policies from time to time and have had a little bit of success. I was talking to one financial wellness service provider, or our team he was advocating for plan level champions. So individuals, whether it's from a financial wellness, third party financial wellness service provider or your retirement plan provider, but probably from the employer, within the benefits staff, who's championing the financial wellness services being offered by the plan and holding seminars and getting employees and engaged in those seminars and really makes it their job to do that. And that individual who I spoke with at that financial wellness service provider indicated, he's seen a lot of success with champions, so plan level champions. So I think providers and employers have to get creative, and I don't think it's just we'll offer personalized messaging and personalized emails and text messages and all of that stuff. Those can all easily be ignored. It'll be interesting to see what our survey data yields on those kind of direct incentives for engaging with the plan. There are also, you mentioned kind of separating managed accounts from, financial wellness, student loans, emergency savings, kind of our, cliche financial wellness topics.
Yeah.
A lot of your managed account providers now are looking to help participants in all of those areas.
Yeah.
You look at financial engines, they're doing more than just custom portfolio management. They're offering in-plan financial, situational financial planning services and financial wellness. Advisor managed account programs, more geared towards financial planning and less towards wellness. But we do see firms like Hub and CapTrust offering financial wellness programs. So, and they're also offering AMAs. Yeah. So I don't think they necessarily need to be segregated. In fact, they're probably more effective when combined with the advice and portfolio management. And I think that for those providers that engage, and have the annual checkups and the quarterly checkups, they tend to see those engagements that they're having, those checkups with those participants it's hard to directly attribute engagement to those checkups, but they seemingly have an effect on engagement, a positive impact. So I don't think those things need to be looked at separately. In fact, they shouldn't be. I think they should be looked at holistically together when you think about people's everyday savings. And then one other thing I'll mention there is you brought up Secure 2.0 earlier with, student loan repayment, that provision and emergency savings.
Yeah.
We surveyed DC consultants last summer and we asked them which provisions they need the most guidance on and which provisions they are most likely to recommend. And the student loan repayment provision was the feature they were most likely to recommend to their plan sponsor clients.
Interesting.
On the other hand, I think some of these features are difficult for record keepers to implement.
Yeah.
And we asked record keepers at the end of last year in a survey which one of these features is most difficult for them to implement. And the top response was the in-plan pension-linked emergency savings account. So PLESAs, as they're called by some people now, are I don't suspect those are going to see a widespread adoption. I imagine emergency savings is still very important. I think everyone in the retirement industry, for the most part, agrees that participants should have some level of emergency savings. The extent that level is up for debate, but does it belong as a pension linked? Does the pension linked emergency savings account make the most sense, or should it be something that, if it's going to come from the employer, should be offered as a separate ESA outside of or not within the ERISA plan construct?
That's right.
And I think the latter is what we're going to see greater adoption of moving forward, not the former.
We have what we call a cafeteria plan, if you recall, 125, and there's plenty there as well that can be done. So I think in the effort to do well, we end up muddling a lot of stuff, and then we get into turf war.
Right.
But more importantly, I think a lot of people want to lump them all together because it's an easy way to charge. Certainly, nothing is done for free, and ERISA recognizes that. But ultimately, we're going to get into conflicts. Is it really doing it solely in the interest, or is there a competing interest? It all has to do with how we charge and what services that we provide. And I go back to the question earlier that the desire to engage by participant is because they have an issue that they want to discuss, vis-a-vis desire to engage in investment management. So an old saying always says that we just want them to be excellent savers first, not to make them professional investment manager.
Right.
They will never be. It is not likely they will ever be.
Right.
So the question remains that default QDIA remains probably the best solution if it can be somewhat personalized.
Right.
Because we're not going to get engagement from them on an ongoing basis. Every 6 months, update your profile. Give us more of your information so that they're not going to. I mean, that's just not going to happen. That's not to say we don't want to have 800 phone number ready or text ready or whatever when somebody has an issue about something. I just found out that my mother has to go into long-term care in the next 2 years, and I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go ask these questions. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if our HR department offered that kind of benefit in the sense of a call to somebody we can trust, they have screened, and they take a fiduciary responsibility if we can. Right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be nice? So that we don't have to go search and to find and to even know how to begin. So I think they are not mutually exclusive, but they are somewhat different.
Right.
And I think that service provider always a mission creep. This one's doing just great here. Well, what else can we do? Can we do more here? Well, we'll make more money and could do more here. So I think there is this competing interests, and it is up to the fiduciary, the plan sponsor, to have the wherewithal to understand where the mission creep too far,
right? And
that one service provider cannot be all things to all people, and then to be careful about what we offer. I think that's sort of what I'm thinking. If you agree.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, there are conflicts of interest abound within this industry, and frankly, it's hard to avoid them.
Yes.
When we engaged in conversations with these plan sponsors at the end of last year, third and fourth quarter of 2023, on the topic of personalization, conflicts of interest was certainly an area of concern for a number of these plan sponsors, particularly with record keepers that offer managed account services. If you're a record keeper, you've got your own proprietary program. You can negotiate fees more aggressively. You can toggle your record keeping administrative fees with your managed account fees, and in order to offer a more compelling pricing structure for the plan sponsor. And if you're going to be able to cross-sell other products and services within the plan, and you factor that in and bake that into your pricing strategy within the plan, you can get really competitive, whether you're an advisory firm or a record keeper.
For sure.
There's really two sides to that argument. If we assume that there are conflicts of interest and these service providers are going to pursue them to some degree, then, I guess my question is, is it really, how much is that going to adversely impact the participant? If the end result of a service provider, a record keeper advisory firm, working with a participant in the plan and having them roll out of the plan into a retail financial planning or wealth management relationship is the end result, and that participant probably should be, working with some sort of advisory service, then maybe it's not the optimal advisory service, but it's certainly better than that participant, trying to go it on their own in some cases. I mean, and every situation is different. I don't think it's all bad, but it's certainly, again, going back to my original point, plan sponsors are very cognizant of this, and they have some plan sponsors, especially the more kind of knowledgeable, sophisticated ones, who are working with a consultant who knows these providers better than they do.
Yeah.
They are sometimes, limiting what those record keepers can talk to their participants about, providing them with kind of transcripts or, just off limits topics that those call center representatives cannot discuss with those participants, and or just turning off some services altogether. Yeah. So some plan sponsors are cognizant of this. I imagine most of them, many of them are not. But at the end of the day, it's really just about, from a fiduciary standpoint, being aware of those services.
I think it's duty to monitor.
Exactly. I mean, so
monitoring is where the problem is. It's like, we enter the relationship, everything is great, everybody's checking everything, but over time we all get lazy.
Right.
And we fail to monitor and fail to get out of our comfort zone and say, no, stasis is not acceptable.
Right.
And then we do need a change. And that is so painful. But anyways, yeah.
Hey, and that's why you should be, a lot of these plans should be working with an advisor consultant. Yeah. I mean, we've seen advisor or consultant intermediation increase over the years. And, I think we survey plan sponsors and we ask them, what's what are the key value adds that you're
Yeah.
receiving from your advisor consultant, or key services, and vendor selection and evaluation is one of the top three each of the last couple of years. And so, that's big.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the managing of conflicts of interest right there. I think with the advisory firms, though, for the most part, the ones that are bridging wealth and retirement, they're really looking at the higher balance participants.
Yes.
So, I think it's more with the record keepers where plan sponsors have to be a little wary.
The smaller end of the
like not their highest balance participants. It's the everything below that is where
the smaller end. Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a cross-selling opportunity.
And I think this is where, again, the language you just used, which is, I'm not faulting it at all, is cross-selling. You can just imagine in a fiduciary ERISA standpoint, it is indeed cross-selling, but cross-selling something that they need. It's not cross-selling or shoving something.
Exactly.
But I think that they are also very much profit motivated. You're saying, well, I only want large clients because when they retire, then I can port that into, I'm just speaking out loud, into a wealth management contract that can last for another 20 years.
Right.
The fiduciary rule, or the proposed fiduciary rule, is trying to shine a light in saying, are you meeting the fiduciary responsibility at that decision making, which we've been talking about since the best interest standard came about a number of years ago with the SEC. It's a never ending discussion there. And it's also about, is it a agency mission creep as well? Are you extending yourself into post ERISA assets?
Right.
And on and on and on. But at the end, I think the idea, the spirit is, how do we protect the welfare of participants from potential bad actors? And a lot of people are not bad actors when they first started. It becomes kind of veering it off. But in any event,
I think the industry's done it at large, though, and the DOL. You can go back and forth on some of the regulation and the fiduciary rule. We could have a whole conversation about that, and you had one with Kevin Walsh there. But I think that the industry at large has done a good job of of mitigating some of those kind of
intrusive and conflict,
kind of the cross selling that isn't always benefiting the participant.
Right.
In mitigating that, right? And whether it's the fee structures within retirement plans, or just the general approach to selecting vendors these days, I think there's a lot more awareness around that than there was years ago.
I agree.
But you mentioned earlier, I think the employer vetting, right? And if you think about the value of a managed account program, let's say, versus say a retail advice solution of some sort, whether it's robo, hybrid, traditional wealth management, is your employer's vetting it. And I think for a lot of participants who are looking at something in the outside of advice solutions, outside of their plan versus inside of their plan, that's a key value add. And we were conducting focus groups with the participants recently, and that was something that a couple of those participants we spoke with who are enrolled in managed accounts indicated, that the fact that their employer vetted that solution gave them an extra sense of comfort. Yeah. So it is, not to beat a dead horse here, but that's part of the reason it's so critical for these employers to do their due diligence and understand what they're signing up for, right? So
absolutely. A lot of work that we do, we are looking at larger employers. I mean, over 50% of the employees work for small to mid-sized organizations. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the resources, nor perhaps the sophistication potentially, especially the smaller end of the business. Does that argue for more PEP-like environment where we can aggregate and then get more sophisticated individuals to do the type of work that maybe the smaller firm themselves cannot? What's your thought on that?
Absolutely. I would say for a lot of these smaller firms, they would benefit from joining a good quality PEP. And some of the pricing for PEPs, I think that's what, if I think about the barriers, I mean, one is knowledge and awareness and the willingness to make a change. And inertia is always a factor. So we survey plan sponsors, 401k plan sponsors, and we ask them, we have a test question. We ask them about PEPs. And about half of them get it right. And the larger ones are more likely to get it right. And then the smaller ones are less likely. If we think about small, mid-size, and large plan sponsors, and a lot of them just indicate we don't know what that is.
Yeah.
They don't even try to provide a response, in a correct one or incorrect one. And so knowledge is a barrier. But if you think about the other barrier, I would say pricing, because I think with some of the PEPs, Fidelity, I was taking a good hard look at, small plan pricing and PEP pricing to the extent it was available a couple of years ago for a project, actually 3 years ago now. And the Fidelity PEP, I give Fidelity credit because they put right on their website the pricing structure for their pooled employer plan they launched a few years back. But it wasn't very inexpensive. It wasn't, from a purely pricing standpoint, it just, wasn't super attractive. But I think baked into that pricing is that provider is offering, the Fidelity PEP, when it came out, what I thought was interesting is they're offering 316 pool plan provider services and acting as the 338.
Yeah.
So you have to factor that into the pricing as well, right? So they're doing all of that themselves.
Sure.
But I think that's probably where, if you are offloading all of this to a third party, your 5,500, there shouldn't probably be too much compliance testing if you're going to go safe harbor, and there's going to be a fee associated with that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think a lot of employers would stand to benefit from it, and for the obvious reasons that we all talk about. So
I think of this almost like a supply chain discussion where we say efficiency, resilience,
right?
Efficiency, fiduciary responsibility. It's should one party owns it all, and then where is your duty to monitor that party, and how do you do it? There's no perfect solution, of course. I'm bringing up things that easy to criticize, but very difficult to implement a perfect solution. I don't think there is one.
Yeah, I do wonder about that as well. You've got hundreds of employers in a plan. Their fiduciary responsibility is to oversee the pool plan provider, and how
are they going to do that?
Are they going to do that, right? And that's a great point, and something I think about from time to time as well.
Another quick question is, as I think about the different type of managed account, and this may not be the way you characterize, but let me think about it. The first kind is what I call the Morningstar Financial Engine Fidelity standalone type managed account. You go to them, they have their own algorithm, and you pay them a fee. They will be the 338. In that sense, they will make the discretionary investment decision on behalf of all participants. They will probably also offer advice on investment, whatever the amount of advice that goes with a managed account. So that's sort of the first kind of managed account that I think most people understand what that is. The second kind is where I think of Morningstar is really serving as a middleware in the sense that, hey, if you have your asset allocation algorithm that you want to overlay onto our expression engine, go for it. You pay us a fee. We can offer advice. We cannot even offer advice. We're just enablers. We enable your algorithm, your asset allocation decision to happen. So that's sort of the second way I think about managed account. And then finally, you start with some kind of target date fund or some kind of multi-asset default. And then at age X, 50, 55, you move into a managed account. But this managed account can be an advisor-driven managed account, where the advisor have already a lineup, and using that lineup and mapping that lineup into an algorithm. That algorithm can still be a Morningstar. As I understand, Empower is creating their own or going to launch their own version. Regardless, you're still using somebody else's engine. Now, the asset allocation decision is not the advisor's, only the core menu, which has always been the advisor. So there's a little bit of a misnomer about advisor managed account. There really is nothing they are managing at all. They're just using their lineup. So those are the three ways I think about it. Is there a fourth way in terms of managed account that I'm missing, or am I saying it inappropriately or incorrectly?
No, that's how I think about it as well. I think that, and I agree with you. It's the AMAs if they're just using the platform's engine asset allocation methodology, then it's like, what are they doing?
I don't know what they're doing.
Hopefully, there are going to be times down the road. I could imagine a value proposition, the value proposition of having a sidecar lineup that the advisor chooses or the advisory's home office chooses that advisor can use specifically within the managed account solution, where they might be able to incorporate a sleeve of, to allocate a sleeve to private real estate or something like that.
Right. I mean, there has to be some value. So far, I don't see the value. That's just me talking. Yeah.
Well, I think and I think the value add for that, if you're, on the optimistic side, is the advisor is in an AMA, they're looking similar to like Financial Engine solution, where you can get that situational financial planning within the AMA solution, rather than and get it from that advisor to the plan.
Okay.
And so I think if you're going to make an argument for it, I would say that's probably where a lot of the value is. But again, those firms are looking at it as a way to
more revenue,
build more comprehensive relationships with participants, and get them into wealth management. So
the $64 question for me, if these are the three kinds, I don't know of, and you may know this. I'm sure you know this. That I don't see a lot of RFP going out there and say, okay, well, here are 4 different type of asset allocation models: Morningstar, Financial Engine, Fidelity, doesn't matter. I, as a 338 or 321 or plan sponsor, whoever I am, who are going to select one of these engines, shouldn't I be doing an RFP and say, how are they different?
Yes.
Which one should I select, rather than what's on your platform, I'll take it? I actually never asked the question.
Yeah, a lot of large plan sponsors are doing that, but they're not doing it themselves. They're hiring an investment consultant to do that for them, an Aon, a Mercer, an NAPC, or, Callan, whatever it may be. And they are doing that.
But only at the very highest, right? Only at the very highest end. So when you filter down, when they start talking about 77% of the people on their platform of plans have made available, I doubt 77% of them all went into this analysis and saying, is this the prudent one solely in the interest of my participants?
I doubt that as well. And I know that from talking to plan sponsors, one thing that struck me, even the largest ones that we were talking to, is that these investment consultants were doing really thorough due diligence on the investment methodologies employed by these various program providers, ones that were on platform and off platform for that plan.
Yeah.
And the plan sponsors, it seemed to me like they weren't looking at those methodologies. They weren't really factoring significantly in their decision making when deciding which one of these programs to go with.
Yeah.
The consultants are providing them with a breakdown. They're saying, all right, they're taking this participant's salary and factoring it into the asset allocation in this way. Fidelity does it that way, and Financial Engines does it this way. And they are providing that information, and I don't think they're necessarily doing it. They're looking at fees a lot of times and saying, all right, what's the lowest cost, because their investment committee is very, fee conscious, and they know that there's litigation looming, especially for larger plans. Yeah. With Vanguard, I think they're interesting because, one thing that did come up is there are some plans that are, they're using Vanguard's digital advisor or PAS services now, that were originally really retail products, but now have made their way into the kind of institutional defined contribution market. So, Vanguard and the digital advisor you can get for like 15 bips or 20 bips.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But it's purely robo, right? So it's, going back to our earlier
conversation. Exactly.
Yeah.
So final question. For full disclosure, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a personalized target date solution. I don't want to call it target date fund because it's not a fund. And get your take on how that works in the continuum, right? So based on our conversation, we're already kind of separating out financial wellness, which is really dealing with short-term, acute, specific financial questions, comments, service, whatever. On the other hand, when you have a full-blown managed account, which also offer financial planning, more targeted, more personalized, in addition to managing the money. So those are like slight difference. Yeah. There's some blending of the two, depending on how much this I want to offer and how much this I want to offer. I think eventually they're going to meet somewhere. But we also talked about how most of the folks are not engaged, period. Yeah. And if they are engaged, they're not really engaged in the asset allocation decision. They're really more engaged in what do I do under these specific situations. So about 7 years ago, I started thinking about how do we improve on the target date fund? And the target date fund, as you know, even age is not personalized. It's 5-year increments. I mean, as close to personalized as you can, right? So I am the same as everybody else at my age, plus or minus 2.5 years on top of that. So that's where I am. And everything else, like my salary, my allocation, my deferral, my employer contribution, my account size, everything else are all national averages. So I thought, well, maybe we can do better. And sure enough, we can do better. So we came up with this idea of personalized target date solution, which is
Yep.
now public knowledge. Tell me a little bit about where you see these all different things, and target date fund or target risk, multi-asset things under a QDIA. There's this personalized target date solution type thing. And then there is this full-blown managed account with advice.
Yep.
Is that the continuum? Is that what you see as people moving slowly out towards that as they get older? Is the empower model of saying, they're all about the same before they're 55? And I disagree with that, but anyways. And after 55 or 52 or whatever age they start, no, this is where they absolutely need to get engaged, because this is the last 10 or 15 years of their lives, and they really need to get, we find them interested in it, so that we don't have to like push them to engage. They are starting to engage. Is that a reality? Is that really the road that we should be traveling? What's your thought based on all your research?
I think there's the dynamic QDIA. I think there's a lot to be said for that. The right age to transition. I think it's different for different people. There are different arguments for, some people might say 45, some people might say 50.
Yeah.
I don't know the right age, frankly, and we don't have any research that indicates that. When we look at, we survey participants and ask them, if they contacted their call center for the retirement plan provider, and that's maybe kind of a proxy for active engagement.
Yeah.
And we don't see huge dispersion across age groups, but slightly higher as participants near retirement.
Yeah.
So, maybe, and if they're going to get the most out of the second phase of a dynamic QDIA, they need to be engaging. So I think the dynamic QDIA is great in theory, but it's on the employer in the managed account program that's on the back end of that dynamic to ensure that participants engaging and getting the most out of it in order to actually, make use of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the key there. In terms of the continuum, I view personalized target date funds as somewhere between dynamic QDIA and custom target date funds, so more personalized than custom. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I guess, especially for the latter half, less personalized than the dynamic, and then managed accounts on the far end. And then you've got your kind of like your target date funds where you can select aggressive, moderate, or conservative, and that's probably somewhere between off the shelf and personalized, off the shelf and custom and personalized. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I see the continuum. I do think personalized target date funds, especially at the price point at which you and PIMCO and American funds are offering them, are very attractive. I don't see them as competing with managed account programs. I see them as perhaps even complementary, especially considering Morningstar's role in the personalized target date fund space. And but is I guess is that where is the industry moving towards a more personalized QDIA in general? Yeah. We've seen a little bit of an uptick in the adoption of dynamic QDIAs. Personalized target date funds, looking at our adoption metrics, aren't really showing up very high because they're so new.
Not yet.
But dynamic QDIAs, we saw when we ran our DC consultant study last year, in the low to mid single digit percentages, which is something, right? It's not nothing. And, especially in an industry where regular off the shelf target date funds and custom target date funds dominate. Yeah. I think that's encouraging. And I think that
just for definition, tell us what dynamic means.
Yeah. Dynamic is dynamic QDIA is a QDIA that automatically transitions you from a phase 1 investment solution to a phase 2 investment solution, most commonly thought of as a target date fund that automatically transitions you to a managed account. at a certain age. But that's where we have seen some adoption. It's not jumping off the page at us, but we've seen some level of adoption, especially in the the advisor sold market, the aggregator sold market.
Yeah. This is great, Shawn. I could talk for another hour, and I don't think you have the energy for it, nor the people listening to it. So I thank you. This is fantastic. I think we cover so much ground within this, I think 1 hour or just shy of an hour.
I lost track of time. I don't know. I think it was like an hour. Yeah. I was having too much fun.
So much there. I think that we can dissect any one of them and go for more time. But really appreciate your tapping into your knowledge. And you are in contact with so many more people than I possibly can. And really appreciate you sharing the lay of the land, where we are and what could be. It's a fascinating time in our industry, all because we want to do the right thing for the participants. And we haven't even touched on lifetime income, which I'm not going to do.
I think you'll need 2 sessions for that.
We need 2 sessions for that. And I think maybe one day I'll invite you, if you are willing to put up with me one more time and do a lifetime income. Will be very, very interesting, sort of a next step in the development of how we help participants to retire with dignity. So thank you so much, and look forward to talk to you again.
Thanks, Philip. My pleasure.
You can always find more episodes by visiting philipchao.us/podcast, or find us on your favorite podcast app. You can always leave us feedback, ask questions, or request a topic for us to discuss by sending an email to pc@philipchao.us.
Views expressed in the Tao of Chao podcast are individual opinions, and they do not represent the employers of each guest or the firm each guest is associated. Our podcasts are for educational and informational purposes only and should not be deemed or viewed as investment advice or recommendations. Please consult your personal financial advisor, investment expert, or investment fiduciary before taking any actions about your plan and investments.